Welcome to BlueFirePoker.com. Martin Fournier here with you for a live presentation. What's up, guys? Jiggy here with you on the mic for a 1-2 live session. Going to be either 2 or 3 parts, but most probably 2, as I tend to get tired after 2 and start babbling nonsense stuff. So unless it goes really well, I'll go for it. I'm shooting for 2 here. Specific game plan for this one, I'm gonna try to kind of recap what I was talking about in my last 2 videos at NL50 and NL100. And try to put some emphasis on hand reading first and initiative. So hope spots arise for that. I'm still gonna try to play optimally and everything, but I'm gonna try to focus on that a bit. Now that I've talked, I forgot to think about this hand. I think that's a pretty easy value bet actually. Here you might call 2 streets with Jack X being the X of hearts, like Jack 10 with 10 of hearts or Ace of hearts. The call with some worse kings. I expect him to raise very good hands on that flop. Now he calls twice. I'm pretty confident I have the best hand, and since he looks like a regular, I think I'm gonna go for an overbluff value right off the bat here. Looking like I missed the draw and trying to get a hero call from any jack basically. I don't think he really has any, unless he decided to kind of slow play and not flush. But I have the queen of hearts, so it's pretty good. I don't think he often has king jack there. More likely raising it somewhere in the hand. I sure don't have any info on the guy on the. Apart that he's at 2 of my 4 tables, where he's more likely to be a regular, so I assume he knows who I am. So that's why I went for the overbet value here. He might think that I'm fooling around at lower limits. With the standard dynamic, I don't like the overbet there because I think his range on the river is pretty weak and he's not making that many hero calls, but with all those draws that miss any like ace of hearts that I'm barreling, any like queen 10 with the queen of hearts or stuff like that against me, if he knows who I am, I think he's gonna find the hero call pretty often. So that's why I went for that, and it creates a pretty interesting dynamic right off the bat too. So gonna be fun to see how it plays out if I have any other overbet spots there. I was just so confident that my hand was good that that's pretty much it. Here, I think I do have to bet. He's gonna call with worse. He's gonna check call a lot with worse. I don't think he ever has better, but I think betting like on the smaller side. Don't have any info once again. I'm trying to get infos on guys right off the bat by trying some tricky plays like that. That's one of the things I haven't mentioned. I know a lot of you guys are constantly asking me, how do you get your reads? Because you always tell that reads are so important. And yeah, basically that every single play you make is based on your opponent and your view of him and his view of you. But I do agree that it's pretty tough to get reads, but that's one when I'm gonna try to do that a lot, and I forgot to mention it in any video in the past. In spots like that, which are pretty standard, I mean, I'm gonna bet like always there, but instead of going for like the standard bet and see him check fold a lot, I'm gonna go with tricky amounts. Like I went with 6. I could have gone even trickier there with like 4, and that's gonna induce some like check calls with 2 overcards or some very weird check raises as like nonsense bluffs that just think I'm full of crap because I'm betting super weak. So with that kind of sizing and seeing the reaction of the player, I'm gonna get some really good reads on how the player thinks pretty quick, I think. So that's interesting. And same thing for the overbet. If my overbet gets called, I'm gonna get a lot of info on how the player is likely to think in a lot of other spots later. So it's pretty much it. I did play a bit before I started the video. I filtered this guy on table 1 with my aces against his ace-king preflop. Not much to mention there. And I ran a pretty nice bluff on table 3 and tried to find it back against Josh 3336, who I know is a reg, and I've played quite a bit of hands against him at higher limits. I'm gonna assume he's dropped down, and from my past experience with him, I think he's just, where's that in? Okay, there it is. I think he's just way more likely to turn his hands face up than do anything tricky. So that was pretty interesting, and I got 3-bet from that Korean pro. I don't know him, I'd never played with him. I'm gonna assume for now that he's just like as spazzy and weird as all the other Korean pros. I elected to make a call there, pretty loose call, but 3-way I think is good. And here I think that range for Josh is really pretty much face up. I'm gonna give up. Like jacks, queens, maybe kings and aces, but I'm much more expect jacks and queens. I'm gonna come back on that. Just 2 seconds. I'm gonna play the other hand. I think I have to raise with all the draws being out there, and I already have some info that this guy is just super bad. So I think I do have a lot of value by raising. He's gonna call me with all of his draws for sure. And he's like snapping me here, so he pretty much very often has a draw. But I don't think I have any value from worse on the river, so it's a standard check back. And he did have pair plus a draw, but stuck out on me. No big deal. Coming back there, yep, I do call pre-flop. Flop, I flop a open. He bets. I could have shoved there, but I don't think the shove is really good because since I have really good idea of Josh's range pre-flop there, I don't think he's ever folding an overpair on this board just because of the flush draw, and he knows who I am, so I could just be like messing around at lower limits once again. And by calling here, I think I rep a really strong range of like 5s or 8s. Any 8 actually, any 8 suited that I might call with pre-flop. And I don't really like, I'm not ever calling with like 7s here. I don't think he expects that from me given the action. So by being so strong, that allows me to take the pot later in the end in quite a lot of occasions. And see a cheap river very often. I think he's gonna, I want that one, cool. I think he's gonna check back the turn quite a lot actually. So yep, I decided to call, ripping a pretty strong range, like I said, making my hand pretty easy to play and giving me some nice options. I turn a pair, I check, and he checks back like I kind of expected. I think he's like pot controlling jacks or queens there, knowing that I'm not calling ever a shove with worse, and not being afraid too much of the draws because he probably assumes that I'm shoving a flush draw on the flop there, which is probably not wrong for an assumption. And rivers a flush, and given my plan that he has jacks or queens really often, this is like the easiest turn my hand into a bluff shove, because I'm just super strong every time. The only combo of hands that I have here that he beats is exactly 6-7 suited, I think, or some weird gut shot, but I'm probably not even calling the flop, so I shove, and he's pretty much snap folded. Could be wrong on his range pre-flop, but I'm pretty sure I was pretty spot on there for like something like queens or jacks. I'm not even sure he's calling with 10s there pre-flop, but anyways, 10s is like even weaker, so that's cool. And I think on that river, if he did call with like kings or aces, you might even fold that river. The board pretty much turned out great for me. I did not hit my strike, but I hit pretty much a perfect combo of cards for me to bluff. So that's pretty cool. And that's an aspect of variance that's often overlooked. seeing how boards run out. And I get pretty lucky, even though it doesn't look like it right there. Just a thought out of my mind. I did play a small hand while I was talking about the old one. Pretty standard, I think. I already have, once again, a read that this guy is pretty bad. He was like 30, 15 or something like that, not on a big stack. So I'm pretty much looking to play that pre-flop with my nines and he calls. And on the flop, shoving would be super bad. I just want to do something weird with when he has nothing at all. So I check, obviously, and he shoves. And it's pretty important not to go ahead and just shove because you're afraid of higher card coming up or just as a reflex. I think checking is pretty much free money here, and if you have the reflex to shove that, just stop it right now. Here, don't have any info once again on that guy. I'm gonna go ahead and all my options are pretty good actually, but I'm gonna go ahead and bet really small and see how he reacts to that. I think on an ace high board, he's more likely to give up when he has nothing and try to call down when he has like any kind of small pair, any 6, any 4, any mid pocket that he would have called with a lot pre-flop. So I'm kind of getting some value, and I'm not building that big of a pot, and I'm not turning my hand face up by like check calling. Now it kind of sucks, but I really don't expect him to run his bluffs on later streets, because by like betting small calling here, he knows that it's so tricky that I'm more likely to like call him down because he's gonna think that I was inducing on the flop, if that makes any sense. So I'm expecting the guy to shut down on his bluffs. Now king falls. Once again, I get absurdly lucky, but I don't think I have any value by betting. I'm just gonna hope that he flop nothing. Yeah, that's exactly what I was planning basically with my small flop bet. And like I said, on the ace high board, I think he's gonna give up a lot. So right off the bat, that gives me a pretty good read on the guy that he's not planning a lot ahead in streets. He's likely to just go for like try to attack some like super flagrant weakness. Probably not a deep level thinker there. And that's pretty much it. Likely to give up his bluffs, obviously, but that was pretty tricky special situation, and I kind of had a good read on how we would react most of the time. I might have been wrong, but I think it was pretty spot on for most of the guys that I'm gonna counter at this limit. He does seem to have pretty much standard stats. That's the HUD I'm using actually. When I'm using one, I'm back in my home, so I can film with the HUD now, so it's cool. First is pre-flop raise, second is VPIP pre-flop raise, and I don't have a clue what are all the other numbers, to be honest. Apart from the last blue number, which is the number of hands I have on the player. So some like usable info so far. He looks like he has pretty standard stats. The bones look like it's pretty net. I do have a lot of stats on Josh, and yeah, he's just, like I said, pretty net. Very likely to turn his end face up every time after the flop. Really, really often. And the other guys, this guy got shot, made a very weird sizing earlier, like just whatever he had, it was super shitty, like overship on the flop where he was representing nothing, but I did have nothing, so I had to fold. But he's like a bad player 100% of the time, just because of one hand he played. This guy too is open limping a lot and calling raises and stuff, pretty bad, and no history with other guys. I could isolate there, but I'm not getting any full pre-flop ever, and my hand is kind of weak. And this guy is kind of semi-tight, so he could be pretty strong there. Just gonna fold. Here, I prefer the call to the 3-bet, especially when I don't have any info early in the session. I think 3-betting tens with a under the gun +1 opener there is getting you in a lot of like tricky, messy spots. And it's pretty dangerous unless you really know what you're doing post-flop. Unless you like have a guy that you know you can value very thin because he's a fish or he just doesn't ever believe you, or you're just very, very good at playing 3-bet pots out of position post-flop. But I think standard should be the call there. Not get carried away with these positions. And I did steal the blinds with my aces, which sucks, obviously. And I think that's pretty much it so far. I don't think I've missed anything. Like I said, I'm gonna try to focus on initiative, but I do find it quite hard to like take a certain aspect of an hand and try to dissect it apart from the rest while I'm playing. So I'm gonna see how it works out. And hand reading, of course, I'm doing that as I'm playing always. There's 3-bet there. Here, don't really want to raise. I think if he's full of crap, he's gonna give up most of the time on the turn. So I can go ahead and fire the turn. And I think when I do hit my flush, those are the times that he's gonna keep up with his bluff if he is bluffing, and I can get some nice value from anything else because I'm kind of disguised. And he does check call turn pretty quick. I think he's very likely to have flush draw himself, but a lot of those combos are gonna be with a jack there. So he's not folding that ever, I think. He's not folding a queen as well, and he might very well have a queen because of all of his timing, I guess. He never really has a 10, but I think he too often has jack or a queen. He could have like something like king jack a lot too because he led the flop, or jack 9. And I'm really scared that he's not folding those on the river just because I did not raise the flop. That was pretty dry, and I think that's pretty much the level of thinking that this guy is on. So I'm just gonna check bet and give up. Did have 9s. I didn't really put 9s in his range there, but they do have pretty wide ranges, and I'm absolutely sure actually that he's finding fold with 9s there. But I did think he had a jack or a queen way more often than that, and I didn't expect him to fold that. So I'm gonna be valuing this guy pretty high, obviously. Should have raised the flop against that hand, but like I said, I do have a pretty good feeling of what he's gonna do most of the time on later streets when I duke out. And I did say most of the time because I was pretty lost there. And I certainly don't want to get bet 3-bet out of my hand if he did flop a 10 and decided to dunk lead it, which is gonna happen too. Here I get a pretty quick call from that guy, pretty fishy stats, and didn't play any yen against him yet. I'm just gonna give up, I think, against that fishy of stat. I don't even know if he's like folding in middle pocket, and he's more likely to have like some king X suited much more than a reg in these positions, who is gonna call me pre-flop with much more middle pairs that I can go for 2 barrels against on that kind of board. So I do decide to give up there. And I don't really want to. I would have get a fold for sure. Now I know that pre-flop range is really, really wide, but I don't even know. He might even just call me down with this hand sometimes, just because super fish, and I don't have that info of how he's likely to call me down. And with the 4 getting on the turn, it does give him a lot of his stuff like 5-6, 8-7, 8-6 are never ever gonna fold the turn. And then I don't really want to go for 3 barrels there because, like I said, he's likely to have a lot more kings, kings X suited or even F suited pre-flop than any other guy, I think, just because of his stats. So that's not that's not a really good 2 barrel spot. And when I get called for 2, that's definitely not really a good, not definitely, but not really a good 3 barrel spot. So I decided to give up right away on the turn. I do think it was a good board to c-bet though. So with just these couple of hands I've played so far, I now have pretty much a lot of info on the guys that I'm playing against. So that is pretty cool, man. Alright. And now Crazy Johnny is just limping again. I could limp back, or I could raise. I think both options are fine here. But having that weak of hand there, and knowing that I haven't seen him limp and then fold to raise yet, I'm just gonna sweeten the pot a bit in position and take the initiative. I think that's my best play. I'm just, in case I flop really big draw or like any trips or whatever, I do have a bigger pot to control and then try to build against anything else. And giving myself the initiative is gonna win me the pot so often with like a C bet when he flopped nothing, just like there. That's a very good example of initiative, actually, guys. That my raise pre-flop is definitely not made to win the pot pre-flop. It's just like I said, pots win are in position. Don't do that out of position. And when we do both flop nothing, I'm just winning that hand pretty much every time. I'm gonna check call my 5 egg there. Pretty much turning my hand kind of face up, but I don't expect that kind of guy to like go for a big bluff there, so I was pretty much folding to a second barrel. And now I do think I have to bet. I'm not representing anything basically. You might check back like something like Queen Jack on the river because they do that. He's gonna call a bet for sure. Could call a bet with like tens or jacks too, quite a lot, since I'm not representing much. Once again, river was pretty much a gin card for me. I'm gonna try to stop running that good and piss you off at home. Oh, yeah, we know it. DrGiggy runs so good. So I'm hearing you complaining. So I'm gonna try to start rivering bad cards so you can see what I do when I do river bad cards. This guy actually, I played a couple of hands against, but no history, no post flop yet. I'm just going to 3-bet that. Calling would be fine too. I think folding is pretty weak in position blind battle with that good of hand. I think it's just weak. If you're against someone that you have a really hard time reading, you could go ahead and do that. But now, not good. Here, I really don't want to build that pot deep out of position against a guy that like is not likely to fold to my barrels post flop with that weak of a hand. I'm gonna widen my value range for sure, even pre-flop. I'm like 3-betting with tens every single time there against that guy with these positions. But with ace 10, I think is just too weak, and it's gonna play well post flop most of the time. So I'd much rather keep the pot small there. Ace 10 suit, there would be some pretty good valid arguments for raising their pre-flop, but offsuit is just too weak. So yep, going well so far. I already have a pretty good idea on how everyone is playing. So let's see where that leads us. Now there's a long pause, and I really don't have anything to say. I could just repeat what I said in the initiative video because the audio was kind of messed up. I'm really sorry about that, guys. But my laptop was having horrible problems. Hope everything works out fine with this one. But I'm not going to do that because I forgot what I was saying in that other video. So just watch it and endure the audio, guys. It's not that bad. And the video was pretty good too. I was basically saying that initiative is often overlooked, and it's really super important. And poker is not always a game of hand ranges and how you do against a certain range of player, and whether you should go for value on that street or whether you should check call that street because like your hand is better than the rest of his range. But very often poker is a game of situation basically every single time, and you have to look at other stuff than like, am I beating his range there? You have to also look at, am I gonna get barreled off my hand because he has initiative and he can like suck out on me or whatever, and stuff like that. Do I have initiative myself for later streets? Can I find a way to gain back the initiative so I can tricky the other players. I decided to defend my 7-9, kind of lose, doing that for video purposes there. Here I'm gonna slow play, no need to raise against that short of player, and I do want to get some action for sure from this elephant. He's not doing anything. Here I think that's a pretty good example of the initiative thing that I was talking to you. Against a lot of players, I would just go ahead and check fold that flop. I know I flop. I flop not big, but I did flop something for my hand, something pretty good actually, and I'm super ahead of his range of c-betting there. And given that theoretically I should call flop, but since he's gonna like either suck out on me a lot or barrel me off a lot just because he has the initiative and position, I think the whole situation gives up for a fold, even though I'm kind of stronger than his range there. I think I'm gonna shove because of flush draw there. I don't think he's ever bluffing. And I thought I was valuing, but then I decided to suck out instead. So once again, I'm rivering my gin card. And I'm just a lucky bastard. And I'm getting berated in the chat. Fuck this side. By chance doesn't know how good I'm running, like always, because he would be like, fuck DrGiggy too, and that's not cool. I decide to try to check down my ace high there against that guy. Now I turn once again, pretty good card, and I'm just gonna call him down. I'm pretty sure he has some very weird bluffs in his range. Raising does me no good there. And I'm gonna go ahead and bet pretty big. I think I should bet here. A pretty interesting bet sizing spot actually. I think I can go pretty big because he has all the aces in his range and he's never ever gonna fold an ace for sure. And he's like, I'm gonna go ahead and make my bet and explain later. But I think the worst sizing here basically is in that kind of spot is something like 2/3. Because against this type of guy, and that's true a lot against regulars too, guys. On that type of river with that type of action, a lot of other spots are gonna rise like that. But like I said in another video, I'm not that good at making hands from scratch, so I'm gonna analyze them as they come. But yeah, when the guy checks the river here, especially with a flush draw missing there, a lot of the times his mind is already made up before you bet if he's gonna call your bet or not. And I think that situation applies. If he has an ace, he's never ever folding, ever. He's just check calling no matter what the amount is, unless you bet like something retarded like 2x the pot there. If he has, basically that's with an ace. If he has air, of course he's folding to every single one of your bets. And I think that was a pretty good part of his range there. The other part of his range is like something that is calling any bet or something that is planning to check fold because I'm kind of representing an ace there, even for fish. Like the ace is a scary card for a fish, so I'm representing it even more for a fish, I think. I think the rest of his range, like I was saying, something like along the lines of pocket 6, that decided to lead the turn to see if I have an ace. And then he's looking to check fold to pretty much any river bet, unless I bet something ridiculously small there, like 12 and 34. Now he's gonna call with any pair or 10. So going for like 22 makes him fold all of his weakish ends, like pocket 6s and stuff, and makes him call with stuff that would call it 30, 32 bet anyways. So I think depending on how well you have a grasp on your opponent's and range in that type of spot on the river, that might not be the very best example, but a lot of those spots are gonna arise for sure when you do play, and you have to recognize them because I think bet sizing is pretty big league of most players actually, uh, you can go ahead and play with your bet sizing. So I think here close to pot or like 10 is optimal, and 22, 24 does nothing good for you. And that's kind of standard bet for most players. So that's another really, really interesting thing about hand reading is that when you can hand read first your opponent's range. Here, just quick parenthesis on table on my hand on table 3. I'm gonna check this one. I would see bet sometimes, but with the hand that was played earlier when I check called a board and then led on the river when I did make my 2 pairs, I just showed him that I'm able to check call on that kind of board, and a check by me does not mean that I'm giving up right away. So I think he's very more likely to check back if he has nothing, given that the board hits so many stuff that I'm gonna check call. So I think I'm much rather with that dynamic. It's small dynamic, but I think it plays a great role on whether a flop or turn C bet is preferable. So here I'm going to if he checks back, I'm going to fire turn and river pretty much every single time, trying to represent something like a 10 that decided to check the flop, which I'm likely to do because of the action that was in the other hand. So yeah, depending on how the board runs, of course, too. And I was talking about hey guys, what was Jiggy talking about? Can you give him an hint? Yeah, I was talking about hand reading and how when you have very, very good idea and you can put people on pretty precise range, and plus you know what they're going to do with most of this stuff, you can play with your bet sizing. It's a thing to have a good idea of a guy's range and knowing what he has, but it's another thing to use it. And a really good way to using that kind of info is playing with your bet sizing, betting small on spots. Even if you have the nuts sometimes on the river, everyone's reflex is to bet super big when they have the nuts because they just pretty much don't think at all and they just have the nuts, so they bet big. But when you can hand read well and you know that your opponent's range could be pretty weak there, well, your only value is going to be with a small bet. Then you can use, like I said, that kind of info and go for a small bet and gain a lot more value than you would have with a big bet. So use your info when you do have one, and always ask yourself, what's his range? What's his precise range? What's my most EV play with that? And use it to your advantage. Of course, it's a step ahead of being a good hand reader. Being a good hand reader comes first, and then you can start playing with your bet sizing or turning hands into bluffs and stuff like that, and use that info. But it comes with practice, and it comes with practice, good practice, I'd say, not just grinding out hands, thinking when you play hands, and trying to discover new stuff, try new lines, try new bet sizing, see how people are gonna adapt to that. That's what really pays, and that's what really gets you better at the pokers. I'm gonna just go ahead and see how the board runs out and see his timing too if I go for multi-barrel, but I think the flop C bet is profitable in itself anyways. He waits for a couple of seconds, then makes a call. I am not going to keep up with my bluff. Here it's pretty easy call with all of those pretty bad players in that hand. And I flop pretty nice. But yeah, the king 7 with no backdoor, only 1 over. I could go ahead and 2-barrel, but I think in blind battle he's much more likely to call me down pretty like there. And I don't have that much info on the guy himself, so I'm not that comfortable. So I'm just giving up. But the barreling would have been good as well, I guess. It's just super close and without much info. It's just a guess basically whether it's good or not. And it's just sometimes going to be good because you run into the bottom of his range, and sometimes it's not going to work because you run to the top of his range. And there it would certainly not have worked because he had top pair in the blind battle. Here, no point at all in raising whatsoever. Don't even think about it. I'm just basically drawing to like the mega nuts. Mega nuts. And I miss, unfortunately. And I kind of miss again. He could have ace high for sure. Could have like ace king, ace queen. I don't expect him to like check back any overpair on the turn. But I don't think I have any value, and if he goes pretty big, I'm gonna reevaluate. And he did have ace 10. Here, pretty sweet. I think he has ace king way too often, and I'm losing value if I'm not shoving if he has ace king. So I think his range is, if he has any clue basically on how to play, his range there is gonna be super polarized. And personally, oh my goodness. Personally, jeez, I'll just shake that one off. But yeah, with these stack sizes in these positions under the gun against a big blind, I think that this guy was sitting out. So, but it's still true with these stack sizes, these positions. Against most regulars, I just don't have any four betting range because I think it's way too tough to play well, because I really hate his play, to be honest, with his kings, because I'm never ever, not never ever, but with these circumstances, I don't think I'm stacking F with queens there. So his play is just awful. As soon as the guy folds the hand right under your hand, then your value play becomes awful by definition. I think this one was pretty awful. So I'd much rather keep, if I'm some young there, keep Jiggy's hands, Jiggy's worst hands in the mix and call and take a flop in position and use my position and my disguised strength of my hand. I'd much rather under rep my hand to the river against a good player there than over rep it, which is just totally awful, I think, to be honest, to go broke. So with that being said, I would pretty much, under normal circumstances, once again, go broke with like aces there in that spot pre-flop if I'm some young, but that becomes absolutely impossible to balance. So I just flat my entire range. But that's against guys that I know. Or I can, if not the guy, but the game is much more aggressive, I'm gonna go ahead and like go broke with aces, kings, and maybe ace king, and then balance to that with some bluffs. So that's your two options, but I think flatting is much better there. Unless, like I said, you think that your opponent is gonna go crazy 200 big blinds deep in these positions with like jacks or queens, which most of the time is seriously not likely to happen. Then you could go in like 4-bet and go rogue with your kings, but I think that was pretty bad play from him. And I'm not just pissed off because he sucked out. I'm gonna call. Being that deep against someone was shown some really weird stuff so far in position. I think I do have a pretty big edge by taking a flop with my position there. Only thing that sucks is that he has the initiative, so when everyone misses the flop, he's more likely to win the pot than anyone else. And with that board, there's no way I can rep anything credibly or like use my stack as kind for leverage for bigger bluff and like raise small there and hoping he folds anything big there. Especially if I don't know if he like is gonna believe that I am a set or whatever, that I have a set or whatever if I go on a big bluff there. So I just have to give up, even though it kind of sucks because, like I said, even though his range would be pretty weak pre-flop and I would be crushing his range pre-flop, let's say I have a read that the guy's squeezing a lot, then on this kind of board I don't have that many options and he's gonna win more often than not. Just because he has the initiative there. So that's a good point about initiative. Here I could check raise or bet 3-bet. I think I'd rather bet 3-bet that this one, 3 away. I don't think I'm getting big folds with a check raise. And betting does give me a lot of folds when both people flop nothing. If I was deeper, I would have gone for the check raise and then big bluff for the rest of my stack most of the time. But here, I think I'm just gonna lead flop. The turn is good because this guy is kind of in the sandwich spot, and he needs a pretty strong hand to continue. And this guy is more likely to be weak. Now, with that guy calling again, I'm gonna shove the river because I pretty much have to. I'm just gonna hope that he folds big hands. I think it's profitable no matter what, and it's gonna be well balanced. He did have pretty much the very top of his range there. I think he's folding any 9 that he's calling 2 streets with. I think he might fold. I'm not sure. He's finding a fold with 10s for sure. I think maybe even on the turn. I'm not sure if he's folding queens or kings. Maybe queens, not kings, not aces ever. But like I said, he's gonna have draws himself a lot, so I do have to make him fold those. I think my flop and turn bets are really good and non-debatable. I think the only debatable spot is my river shove there. And flop super standard. Turn is really good because, like I said, this guy is in the sandwich. I probably should have give up on the river. Seriously, yeah, I think giving up was better in a retrospect. Just because when I bet on the turn, this guy needs a very strong hand to continue, and he no longer has any 9 because he's in this sandwich. And like I said, he just needs a strong hand. So yeah, thinking back on it, I think I made a pretty big mistake on that river, and that's not being result oriented. It's just that he's gonna convince himself that I have the flush draw, which is kind of standard for me to have with that kind of line, quite a lot, and he's not gonna ever fold any overpair there. So that was a really, really bad spot, honestly, to try and get a big fold from someone. So pretty bad mistake on my part there. I do make him fold all of his draws, but these are not plenty. Like, the only draws he has are flush draws, and if he has the ace high flush draw, it's very likely to raise me on the flop. So I'm just making him fold super small amount of combos of like king queen suited and jack queen suited and stuff like that. So yep, not good at all, guys. Here, he does check call really, really quick, both flop and turn. I think this is very likely to be a missed draw with all the draws that missed, or any ace, basically. I think he's calling pre-flop with any ace in the big blind. So I do think I have some value with a min raise there, because I beat more aces that I'm being beaten against. And he might even have something like really weird, like 9s or 10s, or like 8-9 that he decided he was going to play it like that because he's dumb. So I think I did have a lot of value, and I think I do have the best hand pretty much every single time, unless he has like ace jack, maybe ace queen. Here raising would be fine, but I really don't like my spot. If I get 3-bet there, I'm kind of strong to go broke, but at the same time, he has like in his bet 3-bet range, he's gonna have a lot of sets and straights, like flat out flop straights, and I'm doing really bad against those hands, so I'd much rather use my position for the rest of the hand, play it safely on flop. And the more I think about it, the more my river shove with the 7-8 of hearts was just pretty much dumb, to be honest. I just hate it. With him leading and then checking the turn, so far he's shown some aggression. I think he's keeping on bluffing if he has anything better than me, so I can certainly go for some value. He's definitely calling with like 5-4 or stuff like that himself. And I don't think he's ever bluffing the river if he decided to lead the flop with air there. So, yep, I think betting was best. It kind of protects my hand too, because there are quite a lot of cards that I don't want to see on the river. I'm just so sure I have the best hand. I think it's not one of those spots where, even though you're so sure you have the best and you don't want to bet because you're not getting any value, I don't think that was one of those spots. I think that betting did get some value out of a lot of its range. And once again, the more I think about it, the more I'm pissed off against about my bluff with the 8-9. I should have just gave up on the river. I flat out like brain farted the river there. Seriously, that was bad. And nothing in link with my aces getting cracked by kings. I was just talking and trying to convince myself that going for the big bluff was good there, but it just was bad almost every time. That's pretty much it so far. I don't have a clue for how long this has been going. That sucks. Well, that sucks. I had a timer with the old version of Camtasia somewhere, but I don't find it now. So I'm going to keep playing until I pass out. Here, both 3-betting with D stack size. I think 3-betting is super good with D stack size, actually. I'm going to put my initiative theory into practice. Just because of the stack sizes, it gives me such a good stack size, once again, to go ahead and 3-barrel my whole stack post-flop on a lot of boards. That 3-betting pre-flop, even though I'm not doing that well against his calling range, becomes profitable. Now the board just is getting worse and worse for me to go for that move. That's like pretty much like I'm getting away with the flop c-bet pretty much almost always on that board. It's like perfect one. But with the flush coming, the fact that he's probably not folding a king against me like ever, the fact that he could have king jack, plus the fact that all of his kind of draws on the flop are now flushes, unless he was flat out floating me, which I do think would be pretty bad because if the flush does not come, I'm pretty likely to just barrel off my stack. Well, I'm dead. I'm just flat out dead there. Go ahead and put some pressure on this guy. And put some pressure on this guy too. And check fold that one. The board just did not work well for my plan. But I hope you get the point of, like, theoretically, this would not be a really good spot, like, hand-wise to 3-bet because of the positions and the deepness. But I think it does become one because of the deepness. It's just so perfect for a 3-barrel for me. And like a pair of aces is going to be good most of the time. Pair of queens is going to be good most of the time too. I'm just way more comfortable playing this end, even out of position with the initiative, than out of position, even if I keep the pot small without the initiative, against a guy that I don't know, but so far he's made some very good sizing. I might be wrong, but he looks like a pretty good guy there. So playing without the initiative against this kind of guy is not going to be fun. He looks good plus aggressive, and I don't have a clue on his barreling frequencies in single raise spot, basically. I don't know if he's 2-barreling, 3-barreling a lot. So it kind of makes my hand trickier to play if I don't have the initiative out of position. So I'd much rather be the one putting the pressure in that spot and then adapt later depending on how specific my reads can get, basically. And I'm going to defend by just calling there. I'm shallower than there, and even though some people prefer 3-betting with like 100 big blind stack, and I do think it's true. With a hand like a6 suited, I'd rather just call. And since I don't have the stack leverage of my 3-barrel, as in 150 big blinds deep, now I could check, I could lead. Both options are fine. I'm gonna go ahead and check actually because I really don't know how this guy's gonna respond to a lead. I'm pretty lost actually against this guy so far. He just looks pretty good, but I don't think I have any grasp on how he's thinking specifically and how aggressive he can get. Here he's very likely to be just on nothing at all. And I could have a 7 myself, so I don't think he's going for a bluff on 2 streets really often there. So checking, calling the turn with the intention of check folding the river is good. And he certainly has 7s in his range too. I don't think he's c-betting 100% of his 7s on the flop. So he did give up. Like I expected, I don't expect people to bluff turn plus river in those kind of spots. I'm talking about that because if I'm against someone that I don't know if he's going to bluff river if he misses in that kind of spot, well, it just sucks for me, for my hand. I don't want to check call and then check and guess. Now I was check calling with the intention of basically check folding because I didn't think he would keep on with his bluffs. And if I have the same could be good, but in another way, if I know he's going to keep up with his bluffs, I'm going to check call with the intention of check calling again on the river. But if I'm too lost, I'd rather check fold right away in the turn and just save me a super difficult decision on the river. And by definition, being a super difficult decision is going to be pretty often minus EV spot for you because he's the one putting the pressure there. With such a big open from under the gun, I know I'm deep in position, but king queen off is just pretty bad for deep hand. Just does not play well. I'm gonna fold right away. And this guy seems less retarded than it seemed at the beginning. Probably just an aggressive Norway player. So another argument for me not to call. And the eggs I like to check fold. I could check call 1 street. But once again, I don't have any clue on frequencies of barreling from that guy. Other than, yeah, he's a guy from the Kings and very early in the session where I went for some tricky bet sizing. So he sure is type of guy to go for 1 street of bluff as far as read that I took. And I should have taken a note there. I just never take notes. But yeah, I should have called probably with my eggs, but if it's a mistake at all, it's a really small one. And when it's a mistake of calling that's in that spot, the mistake of calling in that spot is going to be bigger than the mistake of folding, because a fold you don't have whatever the hand was. Yeah, with a fold you never give up on such a big pot or whatever, but with a call you are often, if you're against someone that is barreling more often than you thought, and you're like check calling, check folding turn, you're just giving him money basically, and it becomes really, really more minus EV than especially with eggs where I could get sucked out by any 9, 10, jack or ace that falls out if I'm ahead and he has 2 overcards and a gut shot or something like that. Basically, folding is never going to be as big a mistake as calling is going to be if you're wrong in both cases, basically, in that kind of spot. So, without further reads, without much historic, without metagame, out of position, I'm going to take the easy approach and just fold those kind of spots. No need to get super tricky. Meanwhile, that guy open shoved 2 hands ago, and he seems on a streak of doing pretty much anything in the world. So, what the hell is that? Okay. And I missed those hands for... Oh, I should not misclick. I'm certainly going to call 1. It just seems super retarded. I'm going to call 1 with a pair there. Hope to spike 2 pairs or trips, or that he gives up, or that he's just flat out bluffing, or he bets 4 on the turn. I'm going to check call again, just because he looks so lost. And you check back. What did I want to see? Yeah, I'm just trying to get a grasp on how, what kind of bad poker he's playing. So he played his 8s that way. That gives me some info. He's not gonna bet his middle pairs for river, for value, for no reason, like he showed me in the end against myself. And that one was a limped pot against the other fish. And kills call. Oh my god, and he overbets super strong with 2 pairs, which is kind of standard for a fish there. And the other guy, what the okay, the other guy decided to go ahead and go broke with his pair of 10s there, though. Not very bright people, shall I say. Ace 3, I swear I thought I had a straight, and I was like, what am I doing with a straight because I did not have a straight around the flop. And now I don't think betting is any good because he could have like turned a straight, could have turned two pairs. He's not ever gonna fold an ace, etc., etc. I just think it's super bad against this type of guy. I do think the flop bet is good though because I do want to build a pot in case I hit my flush and then he's never folding an ace later. So I'm just giving up against this kind of guy. Kind of sucks to give up, but I think once again the board went pretty bad for me to try a big bluff there. I'm kind of giving up a lot so far on my not continuing my like turn river bluffs, and apart from that spot where I get stubborn with my missed combo draw on table 3, but so far I just don't think I haven't had any good boards to go ahead and make good bluffs, profitable bluffs. So, and the one that I did make was pretty bad, and I should have stick to not making that bluff. So yeah, don't go crazy and try to win every hand. Basically, that's the moral of the story. When it's just not going right, when the right cards are just not falling, giving up is perfectly fine most of the time. Not always, but a lot of times. Don't force yourself into bad plays like I did, basically, because it's not going well. And like I said, it's pretty tricky form of variance, and it plays a good role on how well your sessions are gonna go, whether you get good cards to bluff, and whether your opponents hits like some weird two pairs with those cards or whatever, and that's something that's often overlooked. And sessions that you think you play the best very often are the sessions that you just get the right boards to bluff and the right situations arise, and etc. Here against a guy who just looks like a fish, I think I do have the implied odds. Kind of multi-way pot with that guy in to try and spike the deuce on the turn actually. I'm gonna go ahead and delay that c-bet on once again not that good of a board to try and multi-barrel, especially without any equity, without any backdoor, just two weak overcards there. And I do have to give up once again. I was afraid of that, but once again, just $2, so whatever. This is it for the first part of my presentation. Stay tuned later for the second part. Thank you.